All right. So good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good? Good? Good. So, Maureen, thanks for providing a great insight into the adoption and trends in the industry as it pertains to cloud, containers, decentralization, hybrid integration. What I'm going to do is kind of just expand that and kind of talk more about specifically focusing on integration and kind of talk about agile integration. So we'll kind of talk about what is agile integration, kind of what are the benefits of agile integration, how agile integration is going to help you in your journey. And we at Red Hat, we strongly actually believe that this agile integration architecture approach is going to help you as you now start thinking about creating your services, start thinking about transformation, start thinking about your platform architecture. So you'll hear more about this in the next few slides. And as we go along in the day, you'll hear more about everything that I'm talking about. So think about this session as more or less like a teaser, just giving you a high-level overview. And then as we go along during the day, we'll kind of hear about each and everything, kind of like the different things that we're going to talk about. Just a quick intro about me, Samir Parulkar. I'm product marketing for integration within Red Hat. Been with Red Hat for 5.5 years now. Prior to joining Red Hat, I worked in several different industries, all the way from healthcare, retail, kind of focused for 10 plus years, focusing on integration, all the way from developing integrations, deploying them, as well as managing those integrations. So kind of, I was kind of like more in your shoes before moving into Red Hat as a product marketing. So I kind of bring that experience in terms of when I kind of talk about the integration market. I've been through that as a customer like you. So I've seen that trends happening in the industry. So that's what I'm going to cover today, kind of talk more about, essentially kind of focusing more about the challenges in the industry today, why things are changing, why you need to have a different perspective on integration, introduce the concept of agile integration, what it is, why it is going to help you. And then I'm going to talk about actually two use cases of customers who have already embarked on this journey. So just kind of give you a quick highlight about it, and kind of close out after that. So before I go further, right, I like to do this because I've done this presentation multiple times, and what happened is a couple of times that I went through this entire presentation, and then usually there is someone in the audience who comes afterwards and says, Samir, you said everything. You didn't really explain what integration means. And it's more about like, okay, just level setting what integration means. So just as trying to understand from the crowd here, does everyone here understand what integration means? Anyone here in the crowd doesn't know what it means? Okay, good. Just so that I level set it so that I don't do this again. It's quite simply, most of you, right, and you see this all the time, you use different applications within your enterprise, either homegrown applications or off-the-shelf applications, or quite recently, a lot of SaaS applications. These applications have to talk to each other, right, for many different reasons. Either you want to complete a business process or you want to automate something. Example of that is you say have a CRM application like Salesforce. You are tracking your customer orders in Salesforce. Once your order closes, that information has to go into your financial services application, right, like an ERP application to recognize the order. How does that happen? Through integration. Most of these applications, it's a problem all the time. They are not designed to talk to each other. So if I get Salesforce, when you use Salesforce, Salesforce is not going to say that, okay, not going to design its software to talk to an Oracle ERP application. They're not going to do it. Similarly with Oracle ERP or any other HR applications like Workday, they're not going to write their application say, okay, I'm going to talk to your other applications. So integration is always needed, some form of way by which you can now reduce the pain of connecting these applications together. So at a high level, that's what integration means. It's a way by which you can connect these applications together. So So integration is not new, right? We have been using different technologies in the industry to do integration. All the way from when you go back like 13, 14 years back, we used to use technologies like EAI. Have you heard about EAI in the room? Anyone? Good. To technologies more recently like SOA platforms or ESBs that we hear, right? But what's happening is the role of integration and the importance of integration is changing a lot today. And we see that a lot as we talk to different customers, right? It's actually becoming even more important as you're now creating your digital services, right? And we'll talk more about that. So this slide just kind of talks more about what's happening really in the industry today, right? I mean, when you look at, you put yourself in the shoes, and if you look at your environment, lots of things are changing, right? And changing really, really very fast. The two things I would like to highlight in this slide is that if you're in a, like today, you have to deal with lots and lots of data. Lots and lots of, whether it's an IoT data or social data or cloud data, anything, right? Depending upon your customer behavior or your orders, all sorts of different things. You have to deal with lots of this data. This, like what you used to deal with like say 5 years back or 10 years back and even 2 years back is changing in a very rapid way today. On the other hand, what's also happening is the way you reach to your customers, the medium of communication with your customers is changing and changing in a very different way, right? It could be like your mobile devices, or it could, like especially like in a travel industry, could be more about like kiosks, like kiosk on an airport or things like that. Similar things are happening even in the government organization, right, today, where you are, as a customer, what's happening is you're expecting a lot of things that you see, which all the other disruptors in the different industries are doing. So for example, when you look at vendors like car sharing services like Uber and the experience that they provide to user, which is you, a lot of your customers are expecting a similar type of experience, right? So that's kind of like, on one hand, you're dealing with lots of this data, and on the other hand, the way you are now trying to provide your services to your customers, the channel by which you reach to your customers is changing very rapidly. And it's happening across the different industries, right? Look at retail industry. So many things are changing in that industry, right? With the advent of like Amazon in that industry now, when you go in a retail, like say a retail outlet, the experience for a customer over there, when you go in there, is very different, right? So if you're say a Nordstrom, you're now always thinking about, okay, how I can make it much easier for my customer when they come in to provide them those services, right? When they come in, can I use my mobile application to kind of give more relevant information to the user? For example, I heard actually recently, there was like an article last week. Have you heard about Mad Money, Jim Cramer? Heard about it? Yeah. So he actually gave a really insightful thing about Home Depot, right? Traditional like home improvement company, and how Home Depot is actually innovating itself using the technology. More or less like as a customer, you go to Home Depot. Now when you go in there, then a lot of times the problem is to find things that you're looking for immediately, right? And in Home Depot, you can go in a store. Now the app knows where you are, and you can just key in what you want, what you're interested in. It will tell you which aisle to go, where to go. So if you think about it, right, just an example of it, right? But every industry is going through this today. So what we are seeing consistently is that agility is the most important business capability today. And agility is more about how you develop those services faster, how you develop them in a much more faster way, so that you now develop those services, experiment with those. If things don't change, retool them and redo everything again. This is very different than just creating one applications, right? It's not just one application. It's about delivering that entire experience to your customer. The Home Depot example that I gave, or an Uber example that I gave, it's more about delivering them much more faster. Because what's going to happen is if you do not do it, there is already disruptors in your industry, right? You have to really think about it, right? There are two things are happening, right? Either you want to be much more competitive, or you want to be the disruptor in your industry. So very, very different. So agility is becoming very important. The other thing that's also happening is integration is becoming very critical for modern enterprise and for modern businesses. Why is that so? So this was an article, the Nordstrom example that I mentioned, we have a link over it. There was an article in Harvard Business Review about how Nordstrom is now retooling themselves and becoming more or less like a digital business. And there was a quote in this article about, from the analyst about, only a small percentage of companies will focus on individual technologies like the SMAC IT technologies or social, mobile, cloud, or IoT, but those that will succeed will focus on how to use this technology together to provide an experience, differentiated experience to its customers. That's what integration provides. So think about it this way. Let's just step back and think about what they're trying to say. If I'm in any business today, is it relatively easier to adopt cloud in the sense that adopt a cloud or a SaaS application? So if I'm a retail business, I want to adopt like a SaaS application. It's not, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that's like totally easy, but yeah, you can do it, right? It's like a financial application, or maybe in your industry or space, maybe a certain application. But the challenge is, right, if I can adopt this application, my competitor also can adopt the same application. Think about it, right? There's no, I mean, if I can do it, if I'm in a financial services, if I'm in more the fintech, if I can do it, even my competitor can adopt the same application. That's not what is going to give you the differentiation. The differentiation is more about how you use these individual services together to provide that experience to your user, right? That's what integration provides. When you look at what's happening with car sharing services like Uber, from an end customer perspective, which is you want to go from, you want to like a curated experience to go from point A to point B. Behind the scenes, a lot of these different services are being used together to provide that experience. Mapping services, location-based services, payment services. Uber or Lyft abstracts all this from you as a customer, and from your perspective, okay, you given from point A to point B, and you're fine, right? That's what integration provides. So now when you think about digital services, integration is actually becoming even more important. So it's kind of becoming like more or less like a core capability that you really should be mastering. So what we're also seeing is that integration is undergoing a rapid change, right? Maureen kind of highlighted some of it in her talk, but typically integrations were done by like centralized applications, right? Like servers, like technologies like enterprise service bus. And the idea behind that was you had one place where all your different applications connect to that one place. So you have a Salesforce application or another SaaS application or your homegrown applications, they all connected to this one system. And quite frankly, it worked fine. So I used that before. I used that for many years, and it worked fine. The challenge with that approach is that with the advent of decentralization, with the advent of microservices patterns, digital services, things are becoming very different, right? Why? If 4 or 5 years back, if you were dealing with like say 100 services, today you're dealing with maybe 1,000 services. And now, even now with microservices containerization, you're probably going to have to deal with like 100,000 services, right? So think about it, how are you going to do that? At the same time, right, a lot of times what is happening is because of the centralized architecture, that architecture, now it doesn't happen all the time. Again, that centralized architecture has its benefits, right? It does provide efficiency. But oftentimes what happens is when you look at, because of the centralized architecture, you cannot innovate much faster, which means that the innovation happens around you. It doesn't happen with that. I've experienced this, right? Before coming to Red Hat, when I was part of the ICC team or the integration competency center teams, I used to work for a healthcare company. What would happen is that when the business was trying out different new innovative services, they would just go around integration. Well, if you think about it, right, not necessarily bad, but to be much more effective, you got to have integration as part of your services itself. So what we're seeing is that when you look at an overall thing, the integration landscape is undergoing a lot of change, right? With the advent of decentralization, with cloud, with containers, microservices, this approach has to change. So Another data point I wanted to provide here is we worked with IDC again on this info brief, kind of just talking about different trends happening in the industry, and Maureen highlighted some of this, right? So on your left, you will see that there is no one cloud. Sometimes everyone feels that there's just one cloud. Oh, there's just AWS, there's just one thing, and then you know what, everything is one place. Well, you have to deal with different clouds even within your own organization, right? It could be like a financial services cloud or a healthcare cloud or a Salesforce cloud, right? On one hand, you have that problem. On the other hand, something that Maureen did mention a lot is that the growth of bespoke applications. So if you look at on the right, you will see that 45% run bespoke applications in a private cloud or are planning to implement within 12 months. Now this, I believe this one was from last year, mid of last year, so I think more has changed. But when you look at bespoke applications, these are more custom applications. So when you look at digital services, new innovative services, this is what a lot of this bespoke application is about, right? So there is a need to deploy integrations close to those apps. As those apps are being developed, as those digital services are being developed, as those new things are being looked into, there is a need to have integration as part of that. So what we believe is that what is needed is much more of an API-centric integration, right? Moving from a centralized architecture to much more of an API-centric architecture where all these different endpoints communicate with each other using APIs. Advantage of that is going to give you the agility, right? Why? I'll have some customer examples that I'm going to talk about which kind of highlight why that is important. And again, the idea behind this is not necessarily saying that the centralized architecture is bad. It is useful in certain use cases, right? It does provide you the efficiency, but you should have the flexibility to use those same technologies and deploy them where you want it to be deployed. That's what the API-centric architecture provides you. So with that, let's move into what Agile integration is about, right? See, the first thing I would like to just restate again is that Agile integration is not a product. Agile integration is an architectural approach, right? That's the one main thing that we wanted, and we actually have a paper where we kind of lay out what we mean by Agile integration. But what we have seen is a lot of our customers are adopting this right now, and we've seen most of the positioning that we have about Agile integration is because of what we're seeing from our customers' perspective. That's exactly what we were seeing, and then that's how we came up with this term. So let's kind of talk about what Agile integration means, right? So regardless of, I mean, I gave a couple of examples earlier, right, about like Home Depot or Uber, but regardless of which industry you are in, whether retail, whether financial services, government, or healthcare, you are undergoing a lot of change, right, happening today. I'm sure it's happening in your places today. And for two different reasons, right? One, you want to be competitive, right? There probably are competitors in your, or disruptors within your industry. Or on the other hand, to be even better, you want to be the disruptor, right? You want to be the disruptor in your industry. So what's happening is that everybody's in today's like digital age or digital services, everybody is transforming, right? And this transformation, when you look at digital, everybody talks about digital transformation. It's about how you are using these digital services, right? And this transformation is hard, right? It's not easy. I think if anyone tells you that this is like really easy and easy to do, they're really lying to you. It is difficult. It's not easy to do this. An Agile integration provides you the core capabilities to help you make this transformation, right? To enable you to do digital transformation. It provides you the platform architecture or the core set of capabilities to help you realize that benefit. And we'll see how. And when you look at integration, right? When you look at integration, it bridges the gap, it bridges your existing legacy systems with the new way of doing things. That's very important, right? Because you're not going to just do the new way of things, like ignoring exactly what you have. So integration provides really a great way by which you can now be even much more successful in your transformation. But when you look at digital transformation, right, there are different aspects of digital transformation. From a people perspective, from a platform technology perspective, and from a process perspective. And all these are organization-wide change. Again, as I said, this transformation is hard. It's not going to be easy, right? So let's look more from a people perspective. So when you look from a people perspective, right, and you will see this in your industry, in your company, there are different people with different roles and perspective, all the way from a CIO to a director of a technology, to a VP of a technology, to an architect, to a developer. Each one of has their own goals, their perspective. But when you start doing digital transformation, all of them have to change. They need to transform. They need to change the way they do things, right? If they're going to do the same things, they're not going to get that same transformation, right? Digital transformation, when we say transformation, it's about changing the way you're doing things. So very important. And technology is just an enabler to this, right? You cannot just have a technology and then say, okay, I'm digitally transformed if you're doing the same things. This is very important, right? If you're doing the same thing, and if the new technology, say for example, oh, I'm going to use containers and digitally transform myself. Well, if you're going to do the same thing, then you're not really transforming, right? So from a platform perspective, from a technology perspective, this is where the agile integration architecture approach comes in, right? And what we believe is that there are 3 core technology capabilities or foundational capabilities that you should need as part of this. The first one is distributed integration, an integration that is lightweight, patterns-based, message-oriented, and can be deployed where you want it to be deployed. Again, provides you the flexibility to deploy your integrations. Whether you want to deploy those integrations centrally, you can do it. Whether you want to deploy it along with your innovative new services, you can still do it. It provides you the flexibility to do it. The second key capability is APIs. Having an API-based strategy approach is very important. How you create those APIs, how you connect those APIs, how do you secure those APIs, how you share those APIs, how do you get metrics on those APIs, very, very important, right? And again, APIs provide you a great way to collaborate within your enterprise and also across your enterprise with your partners. We'll talk more about this, and Steve will talk more about this later, but you will see some of the use cases over here. And then the third key capability is containers. Having a container-based platform provides you now the portability needed to now do your digital services. Again, it provides you a way by which you can now create your decentralized integration, your APIs, and port them where you want it to be ported, right? Whether they are on-prem, whether they're in a private cloud, or whether in a public cloud. So these 3 are the core capabilities, kind of like the foundational capabilities of agile integration. But merely having this is not enough, right? When you combine these capabilities with the people that I was talking about earlier, with the roles that they play, and now as you now involve them in terms of the overall processes that you have within your organization, is when you can start now discussing about the changes that you need to do to transform. Sometimes that becomes an abstract topic, but if you think about it, this is really very important how you're doing things within your organization. It's really very important, right? So when you now look into the people part, technology part, remember technology is just an enabler to this. And now the process part, more from a DevOps perspective, the continuous development, all this is interrelated. You cannot have one without the other. You may have a DevOps process, but if you do not have the necessary technology, how are you going to do it? You cannot have this transformation without the people part. You can have the best technology, you can have the best DevOps processes, but if you do not have the people to really implement it, what are you going to do, right? So very important. And so lastly, what I would say is from a Red Hat perspective, we have actually the products that help you with these different sets of capabilities, right? And by using these products, you can now realize the benefits of digital transformation. Red Hat Fuse as well as Red Hat AMQ are the products you could use to now create your distributed integration. They allow you to now create your APIs, connect your APIs. Again, when you look at transformation, connection, all that is needed for any integration, these are the products that can help you with that. When you look at APIs, when you look at managing those APIs, securing those APIs, we have a product that had 3-scale API management that allows you to now manage those APIs. Now, an important thing that you will, and Steve will talk about it, is when you look at digital transformation or digital services, is really about thinking about APIs as a product, right? To do that, you need a different set of capability, and that's what the API management is about. So 3-scale provides you a great way to do that. And from a containers perspective, the Red Hat OpenShift platform provides you all that is needed to now deploy containers. So with OpenShift platform, it's based on the Linux containers or Dockers, as well as Kubernetes, which is used for container management. So what I would want to say is that throughout today, you're going to hear more about each one of these. So for example, Keith Babo will be talking more about Fuse. He'll be showing you some demos about how to create those APIs using different technologies. Steve is going to talk more about APIs, and Christian will kind of talk about microservices and how do you implement it using OpenShift platform and different other technologies. So you're going to hear more about each one of these. So with that, right, I wanted to kind of now give you 2 examples of customers who have already embarked on this journey, right? And as I mentioned earlier, when we started talking about Agile integration, it was not just that we just kind of thought, okay, let's just do it this way. We were talking to customers, we were kind of analyzing how they were actually doing this transformation, and that's how we figured out that these are the set of core capabilities that they are using. So the first customer I wanted to highlight and give a quick summary is Schiphol Airport. So Schiphol Airport is one of the top 3 busiest airports in Europe, and also one of the busiest across the world. And they went through this journey around, I would say around 4 years back. And if you think from a Schiphol perspective, right, their key challenge was they wanted to be the best digital airport and provide a really great passenger experience. From a Schiphol perspective, what was happening is, already they were in the competitive space, because if you look at a lot of European airports, they are mostly transit airports, right? Not mostly, but a lot of their passenger traffic is transit between North America, Europe, and different places. But they were getting a lot of competition from Middle East airports like Dubai and Doha. So what they wanted to do was, how can we be much more competitive, provide a really differentiated experience for our passengers so that our passenger experience is very smooth. So when they went through this journey around 3.5 or 4 years back, and they said that, you know what, for us to even be successful in here, we need to for us to digitally transform and create those digital services, we need to have a digital foundation in the first place, like an API foundation in the first place, right? So what they did was, they said, okay, all our applications that are in existence, so for example, our baggage application or flight application, let's make sure that the information that they expose out is through an API. So they went through this journey almost 3.5 years back, where they said, okay, you know what, we'll make sure that all these applications talk to each other using an API. And they use Fuse to do that. So again, this is an example of a customer that went through different steps of journey, right? They did that, then it's okay, we created this API foundation, now what, right? So to provide that digital experience, just that API foundation is not enough. So then around 2.5 years back, they said, okay, we have all these APIs created. How can we now provide a different experience to our customers? And that's when they started adopting 3-scale API management platform. Advantage of that was that with the 3-scale API management platform, when you create these APIs, you can now manage those APIs, because security is very important, right? How I can secure those APIs is very important. When you have that, then they created this concept of like, when I have these APIs, how can we share this with our partners? Because that's how we can start leveraging the partner ecosystem. And I'll give you an example of this. What they did was, they created this baggage, like flight API, and the flight API has all the API related to flight, baggage, gate information, everything. And everything was exposed as an API, as part of this flight API. With 3-scale, they were able to now like really create these APIs, expose them as an API and as a developer platform. But the idea behind that was not just that use these APIs for yourself, open it up for your partners to use, whatever they want to do with those APIs. Advantage of that is, when you go to any airport, right, typically when you, as a passenger, when you go, you connect to an internet, right, Wi-Fi. Oftentimes, that Wi-Fi is provided by a partner. Think about it, right? You connect to the Wi-Fi, and typically you will get like a portal screen, right? So, okay, yeah, you connected, you can now do. And usually with that portal screen, you get a lot of other information, like weather information, but also flight information. So if you think about it, what they did was when they opened up this API, their partners were able to tap in those APIs and give you relevant information about you as a passenger. So as a passenger, you just say, okay, I'm going to get connected to this Wi-Fi network, and once you're connected, all the information that is needed for you, for example, your flights, your baggage information, gate information, everything is in there. So it's just one example of what you could use using this API. So Schiphol went on this journey. Then what they did was they said, okay, we've done the API foundation. We've now made sure that we can use our API, share it with our partners. Now, how about we now make sure that the services that we provide are scalable enough to kind of take care of the peak demands? And that's where they use the OpenShift platform or the container platform to do that. So again, the same APIs and everything that they had developed, now they said, okay, we're going to use OpenShift now to containerize all our infrastructure. In addition, what they also wanted to do was they wanted to make sure that their services are portable across different clouds, across AWS and Azure. And with an OpenShift platform and a container platform, you can actually do that. So again, a great example of a customer who went on this journey. The next example I wanted to give you was a customer from your neck of the woods, Government of British Columbia. Is there anyone from Government of British Columbia in this room here? Okay, so pardon me if I'm not representing it the right way. So sorry for if I'm misrepresenting anything. But they were, like Government of British Columbia provides different services to its citizens, right? All the way from transportation to healthcare and many other things, right? And one of their key challenge was that every service that they provided, like this was like 2 or 3 years back, was taking a long time for them to develop them. So they wanted to be much more innovative. They wanted to provide a different experience to their citizens. And the challenge with that was to provide any of their services, the time it would take for a developer to, or a team to start developing their apps would take a long time, all the way from provisioning a VM to creating their application in itself. So they said, like, you know what, this is not going to help us. We need a different approach to do this, right? So they started adopting the cloud technologies and say, okay, let's leverage the cloud to start now creating a platform that is easier for us to now start developing our applications in itself. Then what they did was they said, okay, you know what, one of the key things, and this was actually very interesting, what they did was that when we develop our services to our citizens, and we see this a lot in open source itself, is that when we develop these services, why not harness the power of citizens itself so that we all can collaborate on these services, so that when we create these services, we get the feedback from our citizens and they can also contribute. That's exactly what open source is about. That's what Red Hat is about. What we do, we collaborate with the open source communities, we participate in them, and we make sure that the innovations are brought to for a broader customer base, right? That's exactly what British Columbia did. They said, okay, now let us create that platform, let us create a cloud platform to now create these services faster, but open it up to our citizens, and they can now collaborate on these services. So now with the teams, when they are actually now creating their new services, the platform is already there, the cloud platform is there, so they don't have to now wait for VMs or anything to show up, it's already there. And now they can start creating their APIs to now collaborate with their citizens. So now with the citizen, they can collaborate, they can get feedback, retool them, or and redo this. So they created this BC Developers Exchange, where the Developer Exchange was a platform by which they can communicate with their developers, with the citizens, and get their feedback. And what they did was, one of the interesting project that they had was this project called as traffic video cameras, where on the road network there were different video cameras that would actually get the streams of information that was relayed to news network to give you the traffic information, right? And what they did was they said, okay, when we get this information, we want to create now APIs that all of this information is now through APIs. And this information is now, say for example, if a traffic accident happened or some other things are happening, then this information is now relayed by the camera as an API. And then this API was released in the BC Developers Exchange. But they didn't stop there, right? What happens now, the advantage of this approach is that there was a startup within British Columbia who said, oh, you know what, I'm going to use this, tap into this API, use this API information that this service is providing me, and use this information to now create different additional high-level services using a mobile app. Think about it, right? Now I have a startup who's just tapping into these APIs and creating much more different services like location-based services. So again, the limits are unbounded here, right? Think about what more you could do with using a technology like that. And in BC, British Columbia case, they developed those APIs using Fuse as well as on the OpenShift platform. Now, just a quick example again, this was an example, like Government of British Columbia was a Innovation Award winner at last year's Red Hat Summit. Again, usually what happens is Red Hat has an annual conference every year. We have that one in the Red Hat Summit next month. And as part of that, we recognize 5 customers who are most innovative in their fields, and British Columbia was one of them. So again, a great example of leveraging Agile integration. This is not the only one. We have many other customers like Barclays, Logistic Air, who are actually already embarked in this journey. So I want to just give a quick example of them. So as a wrap, right, wanted to restate it again that agility is crucial today, right? It's even more important today. And agility throughout your environment, throughout your infrastructure, not about just creating your one application or one service, about your overall service that you provide. Very important how you deliver them in a much more faster fashion. So a couple of things you can do is look at your capabilities today. Look at what are your bottlenecks. What are the things, what stops you from providing that agility? How are you organized within your, what are your technical architecture today? Are you able to deliver those services much faster? Look into that. Identify them. Look at your APIs. Are you using APIs? Can you implement an API strategy? Think about that, right? Those examples that I gave about Schiphol as well as Government of British Columbia, we have more information about them. See how they're leveraging that. From a Red Hat perspective, we have products that you can try. True to Red Hat, everything is open source. You can try the products. You can use them for free development use. And try Fuse, try 3Scale, try OpenShift, and see how that helps you. And at Red Hat, we have different resources that you can leverage to help you in this journey. So we have discovery sessions, we have workshops. So things like what we are doing today, we'll go through all these different things, but we also have hands-on workshops that align with this. So essentially, if you are now interested more in APIs, we will have more hands-on workshops that actually will come after this, where you can now really experience this technology. At the same time, we have this concept called as Open Innovation Labs, and the idea behind the Open Innovation Lab is an environment where you can come in and we can actually help you. You can bring your challenges to Red Hat within the lab, and in a lab environment, more or less like a true to open source, in an innovative environment, will provide you the infrastructure. So when you now think about, okay, learning through DevOps and those services, you can all come together in the Red Hat Open Innovation Lab, and we can help you with those projects. So we have many customers who have started actually on this path. So Logistic Air was one customer who's actually started on that path, where they said, okay, let's go with the Open Innovation Lab, let's learn from this, because as I mentioned earlier, the transformation is hard, right? When you want to implement this new containers, these things can be difficult, right? And you can use the Red Hat Open Innovation Lab to now learn, right? Not just implement directly, but okay, learn from this. All right. In addition, we have a lot of additional materials. As I mentioned about Agile integration, we have a white paper that kind of talks about what do we mean by Agile integration. In addition to the info brief that I mentioned about the adoption of cloud, and again, more information here that we just linked here. So that's that. Would like to open with any questions. Do we have time for questions?
We're right up against the time frame here. I'm thinking maybe if you do have questions, just reserve them for the expert panel, which will be after Steve's presentation and after the break for Samir. You'll be around over the break too if you want to approach him, of course. But I want everybody to give a welcome. Thank you to Samir for presenting today.